Dear colleagues, today we are going to address the issue of gender. In particular, our focus will be on the psychological understanding of gender. At the very outset, it is important to note that two terms are frequently used in our discourse. They are sex and gender. They are closely intertwined. Sex often refers to sexuality, while gender has become a field of interdisciplinary interest, where not only biological aspect of sex is taken into account, but the social context and the roles which are very closely related to sex are also taken into account. So it becomes a very broad concern. And in our societies, there are various consequences of being male and female. The responsibilities, the domain of work, and the way we adjust with the environment, and how environment treats us, all these things are related to the gender of the person. So, what I intend to talk about is to bring into our discussion the bio-socio-cultural influences on the understanding of sex and gender. Let me make it clear that the feminist scholarship has separated sex and gender in 70s and 80s. And it was emphasized that the cultural distinction between man and woman is more important, and gender refers to that, while sex is limited to the biological distinction between the two. In today's usage, gender is being more frequently used. There are other terms also. For example, we talk about masculinity and femininity. And it is very clear that you can't separate the two. And you also need to understand that they are interrelated. So the biological sex and the social environmental influences both shape the behavior of women and men. We need to note that there is a biological reality. The reality deals with the chromosomal differences, hormonal differences, and they are there, and they can't be neglected. They are active, and they prepare individuals to function in certain ways, be more active in certain ways. It's quite obvious that there is not one-to-one correspondence between the appearance and reality. So the visible cues of sex may contradict the chromosomal reality. There may be some variation, and we often find in different cultures how people behave, how they present themselves, how they dress themselves, how they act themselves. The discourse on gender has become much more complex when we expand the discussion to include the intersexed people who are bisexual or transsexual who have changed their sex. There are people that are transgender. Now people call them third gender, and as we know that in 2016 they have human rights, and there has been important development, and now they participate. The word in Hindi, kinnar, is being used for them. They participate in elections, and they are assuming various positions in public life. Now, what gender indicates is the meanings which are ascribed to males and females. The meanings. And biological differences are related to the division of labor. Now, as we often note that home is being dominated by females, women. They take care of children, and men work outside. This pattern is the traditional pattern. So the kind of responsibilities and activities which are assigned to males and females are organized in different ways, and people identify themselves in the context of those roles. So the identity becomes different. The cultural meanings which are attached to those identities also become quite different. The truth is that nature and nurture both are involved in the construction of gender. You cannot explain it on the basis of nature or biological differences, or only on the basis of cultural identity. It will become very unrealistic to reduce gender to either biology or culture. In fact, the thoughts, actions, feelings, behaviors, they are determined or shaped by biological, social, and cultural factors. And you can also note that there are variations at individual level, at societal level, and also there are evolutionary differences. If you trace the evolution, the famous evolutionary theory which talks about how we have grown, and the phylogenetic development which has taken place has certain markers and certain transformations which have taken place, and they are reflected in our behavior. We will briefly refer to them in our subsequent discussion. Now, and I think it may be mentioned that from nomadic life going to agriculture, now moving to the industrial level of development. Now we have post-industrial society, we call it knowledge society. So all these changes which have taken place, they have organized, reorganized our life circumstances, the way we conduct ourselves, the institutions, the responsibilities. All of them are undergoing changes across these different phases of evolutionary development. So, when we try to understand human behavior, we need to take care of biology as well as the socio-cultural context in which people live. It is very interesting to note that the biological influences or biological manifestations are not purely based on biological factors. They are moderated by environment, the cultural context in which people live. One very important example of that is that the onset of menarche in girls varies between 12 years to 18 years in different societies. Biologically speaking, the functioning of adrenal gland, hypothalamic, pituitary, gonadal axis, how all these work in the onset of menarche. But the pubertal timing, the occurrence of menarche is also determined by the stress, the kind of environmental influences which are there. And that shows that the biological manifestation or biological processes trigger different kinds of changes, but those changes are subject to environmental influences. There is just contradictory to this some evidence which indicates that the kind of environment which you have, that is also dependent on the biological genetic processes. There are many studies in different cultures that there are masculine toy preferences. Boys prefer one kind of toy, girls prefer another kind of toy. Now, such differences, which are manifest in almost all cultures, they indicate that, the biological processes lead to different kinds of preference. Of course, the socialization processes elaborate that those toys, those dresses, those patterns, which are triggered by biological processes, are facilitated by the environmental factors, the socialization practices which are there. Now, I will indicate that the pattern of behavioral engagements which we find in society depend a lot on the cultural context as well as the ecological context. Culture includes the traditions, the meaning systems, the various kinds of beliefs which are prevalent in a society. All these constitute culture. And ecology is the geographical condition, the availability of water, the kind of soil you have, the kind of climate you have. So, ecological conditions as well as cultural meanings and practices, they together influence the division of labor. That you find that in each culture, males and females are asked to adopt different roles. Remember that those roles are socially shared. Everybody knows about that, that this is the role of a mother. This is the role of wife. This is the role of sister. Similarly, this is the role of husband. This is the role of father. So, in a given culture, these roles are socially shared and they are communicated, and one is expected to follow the prescribed roles and act according to them. I may be allowed to use the word stereotypes, that you don't have to look into the book what is the meaning of mother and father. You understand that, and it is a kind of picture which has been widely shared in society. So mother, father, and similarly son, wife, husband, all these roles are so widely shared, communicated, emphasized, that it becomes a stereotype, a mental picture that you develop about them. For example, when you think about a male, the image comes that the person will be bold, fearless, and when you think about a female, perhaps kind, compassionate. Now, these are the images which immediately come to your mind. And these are shared in society. They are transmitted through media and people from early childhood. They are exposed to these different kinds of portrayal. And in that process, they imbibe that this is the meaning of being male and this is the meaning of being female. Now, the different roles have some kind of cognitive schema. Schema is an interconnected set of activities. That these are the responsibilities and how they are interconnected. This kind of framework is understood when we consider that so and so is a male and so is a female. So these culturally shared images are accepted and they are distributed widely and they are imbibed by the people. Now, these are broad images. Let me make it clear. There may be individual variations, but broadly speaking, you will immediately notice whether the person is conforming to the image of a male or a female or not. And they have symbolic value also. And of course, there are variations in relation to strata and societal categories which we have. And we also notice that these images which are related to particular gender, male or female, they apply to many domains of life, many areas of life. I would like to mention that these images are common to many areas of life. This statement should be qualified. That some aspects of those images may be context specific and some are very general and widely shared. So practically you have a gender role and plus a role which is specific in relation to job. For example, whether you are a teacher or you are a hostess or you are a clerk, these various professional roles will require you to attend to certain behaviors, certain kinds of behaviors are appropriate and they are pertinent to that specific job role. So there are general roles pertaining to male and female, and there are also roles which are related to the specific jobs to which we belong. Now, I would like to elaborate the gender roles pertaining to male and female. As a matter of fact, here is a set of beliefs, विश्वास, कुछ अवधारणाएं हमारी जुड़ जाती हैं. For example, and I am not citing researches for the continuity of our discussion, but a number of studies have indicated that there are two major kinds of beliefs which are related to male and female roles. One is called agency, that you are an agent, you act. And the other is communion, going together. Now, the agency role will lead to self-assertion, dominance, and they lead to some attributes which are considered as masculine. Similarly, the communion, going together, that leads to a different kind of pattern where friendliness, faithfulness, being, more related to family. So these are the beliefs which go along with the belief. The broader category of belief is communion. Similarly, you will notice that the images which come to mind when you talk about masculine, when you talk about agency, strong, tall, right? Similarly, you have pretty, polite. They are related to the other category. It has been also found, and there is some evidence also, that in case of female, creativity, and verbal ability is more salient. Contrary to that, men are considered to be analytical, more quantitative. So, what kind of body, what kind of mind, what kind of behavior, what kind of social engagement, these are, a whole set of beliefs are there which are closely related to being male and female. You think about a person that the person is male, and immediately all these beliefs will be active. You will expect that person to be analytical. The person is male, so he should be analytical, assertive, bold, strong. And similarly, another set of beliefs will be triggered in your mind when you talk about the other beliefs structure related to communion, related to being female. What I am suggesting is that being male and female generates certain expectations, certain images, and you expect others to perform according to those images. And if it is not according to that, it creates some kind of confusion and some kind of unwanted effect may be there. Now, there is a peculiar, feature of our understanding that when we observe a particular behavior, someone is talking in a friendly manner, and then you make a corresponding inference about the attribute of that individual. Oh, she is very cooperative. The person is talking, smiling, interacting, reciprocating. You are observing this. So you observe the behavior and you guess, you infer corresponding attribute in that individual. You observe the behavior and you draw conclusion about the attribute of that individual. This kind of behavior is, we call it correspondent inference, which people do, and we find that our behavior is like that. Now, as I have mentioned that the genders are related to certain roles. Roles are related to certain expectations. Being teacher, which is a role, you know it, and that will guide the behavior which you perform. When small kids who are in primary school and they find, oh, what is the meaning of teacher? And they come to home and they play like a teacher. So the young girl or young boy will try to behave like teacher which was observed by him or her in the school. So the roles guide behavior. Now, we carry gender roles, and those roles require us, they ask that I should do like this. A female gender role will provide a script to you that you need to enact like this. These are the activities, these are the responsibilities, this is the way you have to perform. And remember that for stability in society, family, organization, or any place where you are, they have certain aspects which socialize you that you should act like that. Now, biology and the hormones, testosterone for males, oxytocin for female, cortisol is also there. So these hormones are there. They are biological. But how you act, it is also moderated, shaped by the kind of environment and socialization that we have. And with gender role, you develop certain gender identities. You also have a kind of a structure we call self-concept. Now, the way we want to see ourselves, we have an ideal self, concept or notion of self, and the gender identities which are established by the society, by socialization. In other words, the gender identity will put culture in the mind of the person. Gender identities are clearly defined in each society. Those identities are related to roles. They involve certain behaviors. They involve certain expectations. And all these things are put in the mind of the person. And the person with that identity, with that kind of role expectation, those behaviors which are related to that are players in the social environment and the stage of life. And they act according to that. They regulate the behavior pattern of individual. Now, one can have a very strong gender identity, or one can be a person having not so strong gender identity. And having gender identity will also provide, and if there is support from environment, that may contribute to your self-esteem. How you observe yourself, whether you consider yourself a positive individual with good qualities, an effective person, or one who has certain difficulties in acting. Now, the social expectations which are related to a particular gender role influence behavior by determining various social consequences. Actually, one author has used the word doing gender. And if you do your gender, act according to that, behave according to that, then you are rewarded. And if you go contrary to that, then you may be punished, you may not be liked. And if you act according to that, then perhaps you may get praise. So, approval on one hand, penalizing the person or showing hostility towards that is the consequence of behaving contrary to the rule expectation. So what happens? People learn to conform, to act according to the gender